Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett, and you're back with another edition of SmashUps, the video podcast brought to you by the great folks over at Fistful of Talent, and also by our sponsor, Smashfly, smashfly.com, one of the top recruitment marketing platforms in the world, so make sure you check them out as well. Really thank them for allowing us to do it. So today we're going to talk to you about something a little bit different, a piece of technology that came onto the market that I think is going to have an impact to recruitment for sure. And so I'm going to bring on the CEO, Aman Brar, and Aman Brar, right?
Yep.
I want to screw that up because I keep saying Aman the entire time, and it's Aman.
Yes. Aman's right.
And the company is Canvas. So tell us a little bit about Canvas, the product, kind of what you're doing over there, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great. We got our first client production in March, so we're basically the world's first text-based interviewing platform. So we're driving a lot of efficiency with recruiters in the way they engage with candidates. And then we launched kind of publicly on June 13th, and just really excited about the early adopters that we have, and certainly the experience that both the recruiters and candidates are having leveraging the product.
So I've been a big fan of going long on texting, right? Because we have this, obviously, millennial workforce, but even the Gen Zs, you know, they all would rather, like my own kids are Gen Zs, and they're like, they don't even want to call for a pizza, right? Like they would rather go online, or just if they could text anybody, do whatever they could from a messaging standpoint. So kind of how did the idea get started and created in terms of, can we really actually do an interview through texting?
Yeah, you know, where we specifically play well right now is what we call that kind of top of the funnel screen, right? And so that's kind of the portion of interviewing that we're really kind of chasing down right now, which there's obviously a lot of volume in that space. But the idea came from me and my co-founders, Jared Adams and Kelly Lavin. We were at a previous company that was in the cloud computing management space, so we grew from a local to regional, national, ultimately global company through an acquisition a couple of years ago. And the talent portion of the business was really, really important to us. And so really, Canvas is a product that we wished we had when we were growing Apparatus, the previous company. So sometimes those are the best ideas. And so we decided, you know what the heck, let's get after it and go see if we can make a dent in the recruiting space with Canvas.
So what do you see in early returns when you talk like to the beta users that's kind of started out with you? Give us me kind of an example of like, hey, here's how we did it before with Canvas. Here's how we're doing it now, and what's been the results?
Yeah, sure. So what's been amazing, some of the feedback's just been so special. Right? So we've had recruiters tell us, "Oh my gosh, other recruiters are going to want to work here because we have Canvas." And we've had candidates literally text in to recruiters saying, "Oh my gosh, I love screening this way." And I joke that it's probably the first time you've heard the words love and screen in the same sentence in the recruiting world. So
Sure.
the qualitative feedback has been amazing. Quantitatively, here's what we're seeing, right? I mean, there's no doubt that pinning folks down to get the phone calls lined up in the schedule is difficult business these days. And so if you look at kind of pre-Canvas, a recruiter might have been effectively screening 4 to 6 people in a day, right, between scheduling the call and notes and moving on to the next one. And we're literally seeing 3, 5, 10 times that in a given day, depending on kind of how aggressive that recruiter is in the marketplace. So they're saying they're less tired at the end of the day. When they do move to a phone call, they're having higher quality conversations because they've gotten some of the light stuff out of the way. So we're not only seeing them better able to manage volume really in a dramatic way, but then the quality is just increasing throughout the process.
So are you seeing? I anticipate, right? So you're texting one candidate. Sometimes it takes time to get back. Blah blah blah. Like, within the platform, can a recruiter, somebody on the one side with the candidates, could you be, theoretically having multiple conversations through text with multiple people at the same time?
That's exactly how it works today. So Canvas has a bunch of features built specifically to recruiters, like a questions library and a resource library, so you can kind of effectively just literally through a push of a button send your favorite screening questions off to a candidate. So we find that just like you are managing multiple text conversations with your friends, recruiters are managing dozens of conversations with candidates. And we like to look at this screen as it's the business casual screen, right? It's not the buttoned up suit and tie screen.
Yep.
And then what we're finding is after that screen, the follow-up and logistics. So you might say, hey, can you come in Tuesday for an interview with the hiring manager? Let's say that goes well. The recruiter reaches right back over text and says, hey, it went well. We'd love to bring you back in. Oh, and by the way, here's the company culture video that you ought to take a look at as you try to get more familiar with the company. So both those questions are just a button push away, as well as employment brand resources specific to the company.
Well, it seems like it's like the ultimate millennial kind of recruiting tool, right? Because you're like, look, I don't want to pick up the phone anyway, so now I can just text everybody. Eventually, knowing somewhere down the down the line, there's going to have to be a real conversation, either on the phone or in person or wherever that might be. But I'm taking a look from like an operations standpoint. It seems like that's almost like now, like the sourcing function can get involved a little bit with this as well, right? Where you're taking, some of the stuff and you're delivering a much more kind of vetted candidate, not only to the hiring manager, but maybe ultimately to the recruiter, however your function is set up, right? You're being able to kind of just filter out so much more of that noise up on the front side.
Yeah, totally. And I think we really helped change the conversation from one where a recruiter might have approached a hiring manager before and said, hey, you ought to take a look at Sally. She's right here in my notes. And now it's like, hey, I'm going to send you this transcript of this awesome conversation I had with Sally. And you're literally like DVRing into the interview, and you can really judge for yourself. And so it's really driving alignment between recruiters or sourcers and hiring managers because they can actually get a real view into that conversation.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, from a candidate perspective, obviously from a candidate experience perspective, anything that gets them to have a contact with a recruiter faster is going to be better. But my guess is from the recruiter side, catching somebody informally on text, you might actually get a truer sense of who they really are. Yeah,
I think you get a truer sense of who they are. I think we're really loving just honestly the level of professionalism we're seeing in the text messages that come back. And if you think about it, right, just like a teenager knows they might be texting a friend one way, but they text another hopefully a different way, we're seeing that same thing come through here. So when we send them that our initiation text, it's got a nice video that kind of explains the process. And it really explains that, hey, this is about answering in your own time. This isn't the part of the interview stage where we're trying to stump people and make them answer questions as quickly as possible. What we're really trying to do is reduce the barrier to entry as candidates are more empowered than ever, really reduce that barrier to entry for them to get to engage with the company.
Well, I think I like that the impact that it keeps it mobile as well, the entire experience, because you're obviously trying to start them to get them to apply mobilely, and many companies are struggling with that. But once you kind of break that barrier, that next step is that pre-screen, that first screen, whatever it might be, and to keep them in that environment where it can all happen simultaneous, I think becomes, again, just one more aspect of how do we do this a little bit faster. And it seems like that's quality is one aspect, speed is another, cost obviously is a third. And we're always struggling with quality, but the speed aspect is one where, especially today with, just the low pools of talent that we have, if you don't move fast, you're never going to get the person you want.
That's right. So we've got obviously this no app necessary experience for the candidate, but you can also push a link right to the application page if you needed to. But then for recruiters, what we're really excited about is that not only do we have a great web application that they can log into from any laptop or computer, but they can work on the go as well with both an iOS or Android application. So recruiters can kind of always be in touch no matter where they are. And there's a video at gocanvas.io at the very top of our page that really does a nice job kind of showing the user interaction between the candidate and the recruiter.
Well, and that's another great thing, right? Because there is some obviously a lot of the ATSs now are built on a SaaS platform, so you could probably as a recruiter get to your home, get into that, make a phone call, do whatever you have to do, but to be able to have an app where you can text back and forth from a candidate and it's all captured, that then you can dump into the ATS, to me, I think now we've taken that recruiter to really be able to work 24/7 in any environment they're in, and that's always been a struggle because sometimes they're tied to a desktop or tied to a laptop, and being able to have those conversations and having that information right there in front of them.
Yeah, and we're really keen on integrating into the HR tech ecosystem. So our background prior in cloud computing was all about the integration technology. So we're seeing integration interest and where we're already executing on things, whether it's sourcing technologies, assessment technologies, and also certainly the ATS landscape is something that we're keenly integrating with every day. We want to simplify the recruiter's life, and we're really narrowly focused on interviewing specifically. So we think that's our play in the space, and we can do interesting things like we just are about to release a masking feature. So imagine you're going through the screening process with a candidate, and through the click of a button, totally optionally, the recruiter can mask the candidate identity. It'll actually redact any gender-oriented pronouns or words that are in the screen, and we can help hiring managers make less biased decisions, right? So we're really excited about, once you platformize this, some of the really interesting things that you can do with machine learning and AI to help make better decisions, including the recommendations that we make to recruiters. So we like to believe that Canvas is constantly coaching the recruiter. So, for example, if a candidate might ask about a job description, it'll actually pull up that job description with a prepared text that the recruiter can just literally click a paper airplane button and push that right to the candidate. So we're trying to really leverage technology to help with human-to-human conversations.
Yeah. Well, and for me, again, it's all about having that kind of, increasing that candidate experience, speeding that candidate experience up for them in an environment where you have low talent. If you don't move fast enough, you're just never going to get, who you need. So when you guys went through the beta, was there anything that came up that you weren't expecting? That you were like, someone came to you and said, hey, if they had this or we need this, was there anything that you got out of that kind of pre-initial experience of launch?
Oh, yeah. We certainly are just releasing new features every week. And what's been so fun is a lot of those features and ideas were coming from recruiters themselves. And so we would call, hit them back a day later and say, hey, by the way, that thing you asked for, we're actually putting in the next release. So those are some really, really gratifying moments. I mean, even strategically, I think we were initially going to prioritize our iOS app over Android. And when we were out in San Francisco, we actually noticed a lot more Android usage from some recruiters out there. And, they were like, hey, we'd love to have it at the same time. And I'm like, you know what, you deserve to have it at the same time. So we actually came back and reprioritized. So we were learning every day from recruiters and really just getting fantastic feedback from them.
Was there anything that surprised you when you came into the industry to do this?
Surprises. I think I've been pleasantly surprised that the HR C-suite, so the executives in the HR space, I do think that universally they're ready to see change happen. I mean, I think they're really ready to see a movement and embrace kind of transforming and doing things differently. So that honestly has been, you never know. It was a new market for me. I was never solely focused in selling into HR, if you will. So I've actually just been super pleased by that because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And then I think the other thing is I think we might have thought it would be, it's really ended up being less millennially oriented than I thought. So meaning recruiters and candidates well into Gen X territory are really taking to it. And if you look at some of the stats, Kleiner Perkins published a study where it said, only 12% of millennials prefer the phone for business communication, but it was only 29% for Gen X, right? So we're really seeing is that, honestly, the reality is everyone's texting, and so we're finding our candidates and recruiters really kind of moving across the demographic piece pretty quickly.
Awesome.
I also am very surprised. We have a tech background, but the fact today we've got everything from welders to salespeople to software engineers, nurses, physicians, and physical therapists. Like, that's kind of mind-boggling to me, given we just launched in June.
Just across the board, right? There's generations that would rather have, like, hey, I don't want to get on a phone and have this conversation. If you can just quickly, we can kind of message back and forth, and I don't have, and I can, multitask, or I can continue watching this TV show or do whatever. I think it just makes a lot more sense. And then I think there's a lot of people, too, that we've learned through texting and messaging that we don't necessarily – like right now, when you and I are having this conversation, first thing that comes to my mind is coming out my mouth. If you and I were texting, I can actually probably present myself a little more professional or a little bit more aggressive, or I can create whatever that might be, right? Because I have a little bit of time to think about it and say, wait a minute, didn't like the way that sounds – delete. Let me put this in there, and maybe it actually allows some candidates to come across a little bit better and more professional than what they normally would.
Yeah, I think there's a real appreciation that you're kind of meeting them on their terms, right? At least at the onset. Kelly Lavin, our chief talent officer, likes to say often that we should be viewing talent through many lenses, right? Kind of many sides of the prism, if you will. And so there's certain things you're going to learn through the text conversation. There's different things you're going to learn through panels or live conversation. But the reality is it's a great first step. I don't like to, I use dating analogies a little bit. I mean, imagine if Match.com worked where you had to call everybody that you're interested in and ask them really awkward questions like, what's your love language? It wouldn't work, right? And so, but that's what we're doing in the talent space because we want to move to the phone too quickly, I think, oftentimes. So, but at the same time, just like you wouldn't marry someone on Match without talking to them and having dates, you're likely probably not going to hire someone completely based off a text interview either. And so we really just think it's a great way to get the conversation started and for both parties to make a decision about should we continue on and is a good time spent to get to know each other further.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about it. It wasn't meant to be a video cast commercial for Canvas, even though there's probably people that will say, "Oh my gosh, that's why, Tim, are you doing this?" For me, it's really truly kind of a new tool in the recruitment marketing toolbox that people can go and say, "Wait a minute, how do we set ourselves apart for talent?" And we know that so much of this talent would rather have that be that first kind of communication, plus it's faster communication. So that's why I wanted to bring you on and talk about it, because I do think it's a game changer within the recruitment marketing industry and kind of like recruitment overall, because I still think so many companies are struggling to figure out how do we implement more text strategy and SMS strategy in the recruitment process, and I think this is a perfect one. So tell people how they can find you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, easiest way is to check us out at gocanvas.io. So gocanvas.io. Thanks so much for having me, and we're just so appreciative of the warm welcome that Canvas has received.
Awesome.
So
I want to thank, obviously, SmashFly.com for allowing us to do this. Check them out at SmashFly.com. And also the Fistful of Talent folks and Chris Stone over there for allowing me to have a podcast where I can talk about anything I want. That's pretty awesome. So we'll see you guys all next time. And make sure you check out gocanvas.io. See you later.